to Fight Capital, where we step into the ring of combat sports business. I'm your host, Ryan Rappaport. Today, I'm joined by Elthon Costa, an esteemed lawyer, employment and sports lawyer, specializing in sports law, known for his profound expertise in combat sports. With a postgraduate degree in civil procedural law and currently master's student in international sports law, he applies his robust legal strategy to navigate the complex intersection of law and sports. Boa tarde, Elthon. How are you and where are you calling in from today?
I'm fine. Thank you for the invitation. Thanks for having me.
No, it's my pleasure. So maybe you can just give a little bit of a background on your career in law and what kind of led you to today in what you're doing with sports law.
Well, it's not a difficult thing for me. My father was a judge of the Superior Labor Court here in Brazil and was a judge all his life. So that was the model that I had. Labor law came because it's a natural and closer thing, but fighting came as something that was inherent to what I did, which was practicing martial arts back in the days since I was a child. I studied what there was of the law connected to that, even took the sources very scarce, and today, unfortunately, they still are. Another thing that's, I'm from Belém do Pará, birthplace of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, and so I live in an environment that breathed martial arts. As a child, I trained under Mashida's father, Yoshizo, Master Yoshizo, is why my former sensei. And I still remember when we saw the first VHS of the UFC. And about 4 years ago, I think so, I started to really have an interest in adding to sports law scene. Here's something about martial arts, and now here we are.
Oh, very interesting. Yeah, I actually got to meet Lyoto Machida not too long ago. He trains at a gym that I've trained at before.
I trained with him back the day when I was a child. I fought him. That's why I chose to be a lawyer instead of a fighter.
learned your lesson. Yeah. And he still competes at a very high level too. I mean, he's still in there training on a regular basis, so it's very cool to see. Well, tell me a little bit about your work, because you have this deep knowledge of sports law and martial arts, and you work specifically in Brazil, where it's a very different sports environment to here in the United States and in Europe and everywhere else around the world. Can you talk a little bit about the evolution of MMA in terms of the business growth and regulatory developments?
Yeah, the question is, combat sports now is not an easy thing to do anymore. There's no longer that mentality of any way, anytime. Guys do it for a living now, so it's all very professional. The contracts between the athletes and the managers, sponsors, and the events needs to provide for things that weren't there in the past. Back in the old days, you made a contract for a fight and had a predicted payment and a sponsor already in the contract and a way to hit. So now you sign for several fights, and many things can happen between, like a fighter getting pregnant, for example. How does a promotion deal with that? That's my job now, that I have to see some issue with a fighter that has a problem with something, and I have to look for the country law and say, hey, this thing needs to change because it's not a thing that will be fine for the fighter or for the promotion, or like a health issue. You have to be very aware of the law in every country that I have an organization that I work for, and running shows and regulate the whole thing. So that's my job now.
Well, there's a lot of complexities, right, in sports, never mind MMA. Can you talk a little bit about the impact of the overall business environment that the promoters, athletes, and sponsors are dealing with because of all that complexity?
Yeah, I think it's like an organic thing, like something that you have to look for the different regulations between different countries. You had the example of one championship when they came to United States, and the regulation of the original one rule, which is the global one rule, uses like knees on the ground, so you can knee a fighter on the ground when there's a position on the ground. And by the unified MMA rules in United States, you can use a knee when your opponent is on the ground. So that thing that you have to look the whole picture and say, no, now things are get more like easy to do because everyone knows how the rules apply. And now United States, as an example, is opening this path for you have more shows that don't use the rule, don't use exactly the unified MMA rules into their territory. So you have to look at the thing and say that it's like a more evolved thing now.
And it is, right? And I had a chance to see all of your certifications, and I wanted to say them all, but I think my introduction would have been another 5 or 10 minutes long. So I wanted to save all the listeners for that. But you have this, you're not just working in MMA, you're working in kickboxing and other sports, and giving this, you have a very holistic view of what's happening. What are some of the unique challenges you have faced working in sports law, if you can mention anything specifically, and how have you navigated them?
I think the more challenging situation is about the health issue of the athletes. Recently, we have been trying to unite the fight records of all the athletes from all the organizations. I work through BoxHack. BoxHack is a very easy tool to access. So the goal, apart from keeping track of the suspension of our athletes, is to ensure that they have the fights recorded and so can be seen by all the promoters who may be able to get them to do bigger fights. Not to mention the rankings, they will be able to qualify to join. This will be a solution to prevent athletes from fighting without being fit for it. Finally, to fulfill the medical suspension problem, which has happened most of the time. In Brazil, the law allows the athletes to fight today, be knocked out, and fight in a week, and he may die that way. So my biggest dream today is to change this scenario. I can say one of the hard things about my job is when an organization like ABC asks why a famous athlete, I'm not going to mention the athlete's name, is fight someone whose record wouldn't allow it, and we have to justify that we have no control over it, and that the law here in Brazil allows that sort of thing. We have agreements through the National Boxing Council, which is the CNB, where I am the head of the legal department also, with several national federations in Latin America, all of them, in fact. For Brazilians to fight there in the countries, we need to release them as if to wear a kind of passport, or like a sports passport. And they do the same with their athletes when they came to here. But if they come here to fight, if we're not with us, we can't stop it, and the federations fight it strength that the law here allows, but it's the reality here. So there's not much we can do about it.
Well, that seems to be a problem globally. I know even just here within the United States, you have, one state that says it has to be done this way, and then it's a completely different set of rules in a state right next door. It's a very interesting problem that there's never mind national coordination, but the international coordination, just with the way the sport has grown as well, it only would make sense that there would be something like a passport.
They don't like the idea because we can basically say stop them from fighting, actually. So that's not the idea that is very popular with them, but we have to do something to make sure that this health is on point. So I think it's a good idea.
Well, and MMA is continuing to grow worldwide too. I know you've worked with the IMMAF, the International MMA Federation. Yeah. What do you see as, organizations like that and other sport governing global organizations, and could they influence the business side of the sport as well?
Yeah, for sure. Many athletes who have paced through IMMAF are now reality, like Mohamed Mukaev. The guy has like 30 amateur fights. The idea has always been to train, prepare for a professional life for all the athletes. Today, athletes start their professional career very early. You have guys with 18 years, like Rory McDonald in the past, and fighting professionals without any experience. You have the examples of people who succeeded doing that, but it's not, most of the time, it's not the reality. So EMF came to change this and show that maturation is necessary before the athlete makes this transition. Our goal is to reach Olympics, as everyone knows. We know that's not easy, but MMA has already overcome bigger challenges, and I think this will be another one that we're gonna overcome.
Yeah, I mean, just the geopolitical lines in anything is difficult, but in sports, sports is about bringing us all together. So it seems like there has to be some solution there.
For sure.
And there's you've done work with contracts with MMA athletes, if I recall correctly, or if you haven't, can you highlight some of the essential clauses and the impact that these contracts are having on the careers of the athletes?
Yeah, that's a controversial question, but I have to address this issue. I think the biggest controversy for me it's the exclusivity clause. In Brazil, this clause can lead to the interpretation that the athlete is an employee of the promotion. I know there's a lawsuit going in US against the UFC addressing exactly this aspect, but I think this should be changed. I think if you have exclusivity over someone who works in Brazil, you have to give a counterpart. What's the counterpart that the show gives to the fighter who is under this clause? Does the athlete receive a monthly salary to wait for the fight? A stipend? And he gets injured trying to fight and often goes without anything. So the fair thing would be for him to get paid to wait since he can fight for another promotion. Another thing that exclusivity affects is the lack of definition of when the athlete will fight. The athlete signed for like 5 fights for 3 years, and there is no clause that says the promotion has a definite time to give him a fight. He's stuck with no option to go and lose valuable years of his career or her career. Because of this risk, I think the athlete should demand clauses that oblige the promotions to give them fights, at least 2 per year. I don't know, for example. Otherwise, the contract for me would be considered as broken. I think now we have the Ngannou case, which is public, so everyone can look for the whole picture and try to get something and to learn something and to try to change that model that you have now, that you have for a long time, and I think that model has to change.
Yeah, I agree. And Ngannou obviously is a very special case. But something else you mentioned to me earlier in that case you gave about a pregnancy with an athlete and what that looks like. Could you talk a little bit about gender roles within MMA? I know this is a big thing in Brazil. Obviously, you have one of the greatest of all time women's champions in Amanda Nunes.
Yeah,
but
Nunes.
How are you seeing MMA or in MMA? How are you seeing gender issues being addressed?
You have different answers for different organizations that I work for. So you have WBC, who is under, which is the CNB here, the National Boxing Council is under them, and they said they have to create a separate category, so you have transgender fighting there. So gender is a very delicate issue. We do not have definitive studies of whether or not they are advantageous for those who transition, start fighting with those who gender they identify with. I think we need to advance more in this research, but I like to think that combat sports has always been open to everyone. The female categories are indispensable in the fight, and in Brazil, we owe a lot to the women who came, like you said, represent us like Cyborg and Nunes, even when the support was known here. We have a Muay Thai champion we won, which as I mentioned earlier, who is little known, in Brazil, Alicia, and this still needs to improve a lot. People need to learn about many females who really are trying to put the things together and to bring our flag to higher levels. So I think we have much work to do in this issue.
Yeah, it's one of those things. I think it's continually evolving, and as more high level athletes come into the sport, you'll see a greater range of the athletes for women and for men that are competing. Like you said, soccer. I think of like a Jose Aldo, right, who was a pretty darn good soccer player and chose martial arts instead. And I think there's going to be a lot of that moving forward.
everyone know he knew how to kick someone. So imagine a ball in the place of someone's legs. Just
The
kidding.
ball there. No, it's true though. But you had a pretty diverse role in sports law, and you've seen all these different sports like kickboxing and boxing. What would you suggest for younger lawyers who might be aspiring to build a career in sports law, particularly in emerging sports like MMA?
It may sound cliche, Ryan, but I think the main thing is to consume as much content as you can, if I can say so. There are a few sources of study, and where you learn the most about clauses is precisely by reading about them in interviews or in podcasts like this, or even when athletes debate them publicly. It helps a lot to be close to them too, training and following their routine. In my case, fighters tend to identify with those who follow their behavior. Believe me, they may have been fooled in the past by someone on a switch most of the time. So it's healthy. They can see the law professional who is citing them as someone who really cares about what they are doing. The sources to start are scarce, as I said. So I consume what you can and always research until you feel safe to offer yourself to work. But if you have a legal basis, in my case, it's labor law, where you can always support yourself to analyze the problems, but always study and keep up to date with the best works in the market. You cannot allow yourself to not be like up to date with everything that the market has shown to you. So you have to read the interviews, to watch videos, and to why not? You have to keep up with fights. You have to watch every fight and to be able to appreciate the whole thing and try to implement your own ideas, legal ideas on all these things, so you can make a better sport using the law like I'm trying to do right now.
I love that answer. One, thanks for the podcast shout out. And yeah, I agree, right? Being able to go and have that deeper level of understanding. And I think that's the beauty of the environment today, because as an athlete or as a manager or as a lawyer, there is so much content out there that's telling a different side of a story, narrowing in and being very specific on one part of the craft. So seeing that develop and having you give the recommendation, hey, look at it all. Don't just read, the legal handbooks and the rule books. Go deeper, read the fighters, listen to what other jurisdictions are doing.
You have to like fights. You have to like. I watch fights every time. If you want help, if you want really to get money from this, you have to make sure that you are doing a thing that you are into, that you are trying to learn with fighters, trying to learn sometimes how to fight properly, trying to be in martial arts classes, so you can see the problems and you can create a solution for the problem, because you are into this thing, like integrated with the whole thing. So for me, it's a very is a demand you have to do like this.
No, I love that. Yeah, and it has to come from that base passion, right? Having that passion for what you're doing, I think is the most important part.
Are great words for using.
Yeah, well, this is awesome. Thank you so much for doing this, Elthon. It's really hearing your perspective from a global perspective on this is very, very important. If anyone wants to engage with you or learn more from you, what's the best way for them to contact you?
You can get me on Instagram, @Elthon Costa. It's my name. Or in LinkedIn. It's the same name that I use on LinkedIn. And you can hit me anytime you want with questions or something that you want to discuss with me. So you can, like I said, trying to get the whole thing better for combat sports.
Well, thank you so much for doing this. I really appreciate you being here today. And if you have any updates or anything else that's coming through that's interesting, feel free to reach back out, because I'd love to have you back on.
Thanks, Ryan. Thanks for having me. Thanks for everyone watching.
Thank you.